sort of, ish. Um, I was in high school, and there were these two girls that were kind of the misfit, outcast, social fuck ups, and they had a little boombox, and it wasn't even early in the Ramones' career, but for some reason I had just missed their early years, and they were playing. I think they were playing Rockaway Beach or something like that, and it really, it does kind of catch your ear the first time you hear it. It's like, huh, what's that? And they were the cool girls, really. They were the girls that were, listening to something that nobody else in school were listening to. Nope, I thought it sounded good. I thought they were cool, and I liked the fact that these girls had, a taste that I hadn't heard before in music. But it wasn't something that I wasn't really buying that many records right then. I lived with a guy who was a record collector, so I was kind of leeching off his record collection at the time. Yes, I did. Saw them live, and we actually opened up for them once at a festival in Finland in either 86 or 1987. And we were pretty excited about that, just because particularly overseas, the Ramones were kind of, treated as these bigger than life, almost like, cartoon legend icon, Beatles of our generation type figures. And when we got to this country, which was Finland, everywhere we went, people had Ramones paraphernalia, Ramone signs with lyrics, and everyone was just, they couldn't have been more excited about the Ramones coming to their country and playing some show in the remote outback of Finland for a festival. And that was a bill that we were on, and we played early in the day. And they were, headlining and closing, so we got to think about them all day and, see the kind of hubbub that they had created. And my memories of that are probably my most intense Ramones memories, because we were so amped about their show, and backstage before they went on, we discovered that they did something, very kind of bizarre and unexpected from any rock band that I'd ever seen or been exposed to before, which was they rehearsed the entire set at a quiet volume from beginning to end before they went and played it as a performance. They got into their tiny little room with their tiny little amps and just, started counting off songs and going through the whole song, one after another, the entire set list, just making sure it was ready to go, which I think kind of speaks to the strange sense of perfectionism that, a punk rock band like themselves would have. People think of these bands as just being kind of, not necessarily sloppy, but just a little more anarchistic in their musical nature, and these guys were real professional in that respect anyways. So they did that, and we kind of freaked out because we'd never heard anybody do that before. And then we started hatching an ill-fated plan, if you will, which was Flea and myself and Jack Irons, the drummer of our band at that time. For some reason, Hillel, the guitar player, chose not to participate in this shenanigan, but we decided it would be a great moment of homage if we would dance across the stage naked during the Ramones set. And at that time, I had never seen the Ramones play, and I didn't realize that they were all business on stage, and they had their idea of what a show should be in their own aesthetic and their own presentation. And so although we didn't mean to step on any toes, I think we waited for Blitzkrieg Bop or something, and Flea and Jack and I, we all stripped down naked on the side of the stage and danced with love in our hearts across the front of the stage. Not that obnoxious thing where you kind of stop and soak up the spotlight, but just a conveyor belt of 3 naked dancers going across the stage. And then we got off. We weren't trying to be the guy out there who was drunk and, look at me. We just did our business and left, and we thought it was good and exciting, and paying respect to this band. And it turns out that it was very poorly received by the band, particularly by Johnny, who was irate and incensed by the act. And we didn't know this at the time, but afterwards we ran into him in the lobby of this bizarre Finnish compound, and he was yelling at us in a very strict and hateful manner about how we had no business doing that, and who do we think we are, and we ruined their show, and needless to say, my heart sunk, because that was not our intention. It was just to let them know that we were feeling them, and I was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it wasn't, there was no impending physical violence, but it was just, he was really unhappy about our maneuver. And so I continued to shrink and shrink and shrink. And then Joey came up to me after he sort of witnessed this verbal scolding. And he just very simply whispered into my ear, "I thought it was kind of cool," and then walked away. So he kind of spared me from feeling like a jerk forever. He's like, well, if I pissed off, the guitar player, at least the singer, was okay with it. And oddly enough, that was my last experience with the Ramones for a very long time. And I would just kind of, hear them here and hear them there, and I always appreciated and respected it, but never really delved deep into the meat of the Ramones. I just, for whatever reason, they escaped me. They escaped my attention in that way for a long, long time. And then I met Rick Rubin, and I remember being kind of shocked and surprised when Rick would give me his, top 5 favorite rock bands ever. And I think he would always put them number 2. He would say there was the Beatles, and then there's the Ramones, and then he would go on to his next, and I was like, wow, that's a pretty top slot there. And that kind of opened my mind to listening to them more and more. And, fast forward to John, being absolutely in love with everything about the Ramones, and in a real soulful way. And I remember when he came to me and said, the Ramones want us to cover a song for a tribute record, a compilation record. And I was like, great, let's do it. And he played for me a song called Havana Affair. And then he showed me how we were going to change it. And that's when I really had to start listening to the Ramones for real. And that's, I was kind of a late bloomer when I really discovered what was happening with this band and just how perfect they were. And how perfect every individual was, and how even more perfect the chemistry of those people were together. And one by one I kind of just had my mind blown, from Dee Dee and Tommy and Joey and Johnny, all of them just being the most unique and personality-filled musicians, and then how well they did together. And that's when I kind of started getting all of their records and listening to them, and learning from them, and learning how to play along with them and stuff like that. I think that was my only encounter. Oddly enough, I would later become friendly with the guy who hated my guts in that lobby, which was Johnny, because my John started hanging out with Johnny Ramone, and we all kind of, John and I got into collecting antique movie posters, vintage movie posters, and started going to vintage movie poster meets or gatherings with Johnny, and just walking around, listening, talking, learning, checking this guy out, and we became friends, and spending time on different occasions with him and his wife Linda. Well, I mean, it was just kind of understood that we would definitely do it. It didn't even require a real approaching. By that time, Johnny was obviously very sick and had been for a couple of years, and John Frusciante had become closer and closer and closer, really a family member in that Linda and Johnny household there. So, the minute that I knew there was going to be some sort of a benefit show, I mean, of course, we were going to be doing that, and it would be an honor to do it, and it would, be again a great learning experience for me because we had to learn 5 or 6 Ramones songs at that point, and that's, a real education for a singer. Joey Ramone makes it seem so incredibly easy what he does that you almost don't stop to think about the fact that this is one of the greatest rock singers ever, because it's not, full of gymnastics or flash. But if you really listen carefully to every little nuance of that guy's singing style, it's shocking how good he is. And to have to even begin to sing, carry a song that he's singing that sounds so simple and easy and so sing-alongy, was a great education for me, and he became one of my favorite singers from studying him. And I kind of put him up there with Elvis in a strange way. 2 guys who seemingly, aren't really singing, Led Zeppelin style songs where it's, blatantly obvious that this guy has vocal chops, but, people that know how to sing a song and make it sound better than anyone else. No, he didn't. We would have been happy to have the suggestions, but I think he knew John well enough to know that we would probably arrive at a wise decision, based on his awareness of John's familiarity with all of their songs. And it was actually an unexpected process, because I think we started off by learning maybe 7 or 8 songs, and we tried them, and then a few of them just didn't suit us, or we didn't really bring anything special to the table, so we shifted gears and ended up playing some more predictable songs to cover, like I Want to Be Sedated. That was not one of our original choices, but then when we tried it just for fun to see how it felt, it was something that was contagious, the desire to play that song. So yeah, in the end we all kind of chipped in, and a lot of it depends on what I'm even capable of doing. I practiced my ass off, with the band and without, because I had to. I had to, just to get to the level of acceptability. There wasn't a lot of talk about wanting to emulate or sound exactly like them. With Havana Affair, it just seemed more interesting to take it and change it a little bit and play it more with the spirit of the Ramones than the actual sonic flavorings of the Ramones. And I'm glad we did that, because we played that live in our set for a long time now, and you feel the Ramones in there, but it sounds different. And with the tribute show, it was more just paying respect and wanting to make the people that were there remember the Ramones and feel the Ramones.